Right, on to the next lesson now. We're going to do a vase or vase scene from a cylinder. So we'll start with a basic cylinder primitive and edit the mesh to create a vase kind of shape. Then we can add a texture, a shader. We can light it and render it, try getting it look pretty photorealistic. And then we can practice comping it onto a live action background. I'll show you how to do that in Maya, and then I think Josh will show you how to comp it finally in After Effects for the final composition. Okay, so let's begin on the vase scene. Let's have a quick look. I didn't go over it in the last lesson. The shelf that I've got here for my polys is a custom one. I've included the file, so to install that, it's quite simple. You would just need to, let me just check, to install the shelf, to set up a custom shelf, you can create a new shelf over here. You just go new shelf, name it, and then start adding buttons. To add a button to the shelf, it's Control and Shift, but on a Mac that might be Command. So let me just see if it works. So I've got my poly shelf here. If I wanted to add a new button, let's say I'll add bridge or circularize. If I hold Control and Shift and click bridge, yeah, it's added it on the end of the list there. So that's how you can kind of add buttons, make your list really long. But I've included the poly file that you can start with, and all you have to do is put it in the folder, which is under Documents, Maya 2020 Prefs Shelves, and then just chuck that file in that folder, and you'll have the same one as I've got. So that's pretty much setting up a custom shelf. Okay, let's jump back into Maya. So first things first, let's create a cylinder. So create polygon cylinder. I can do it up there, or I could hold Shift, right click cylinder. Let's quickly just check what kind of vase we're going to make it look like. Vase. Okay, let's have a look. That's something cool. I'm going to go with like a kind of ancient vase. Yeah, something like this is quite good. I'll maybe go with something like that, but I'll texture it slightly differently. So there's a cool little program that you can have to keep your reference open while you're modeling, and that is called Pure Ref. I'll give you the download instructions. It's just called Pure Ref. Go to pureref.com and download the Windows or the Mac version. And once you've got that downloaded, launch Pure Ref and simply just go to your image and drag it into the Pure Ref. Okay, so now even if we're in Maya, the Pure Ref window stays open. So I'm going to keep that in the window, kind of in the corner, just so it's just a bit out of the way, but I can still kind of see it while I'm modeling. Alright, let's start. So to begin with, our cylinder has 20 subdivisions as standard. We want to start that about 10. And to do that, we go under the Inputs tab, so Poly Cylinder 1. Subdivision axis 20, let's change that to 10. And that will lower the axis. It's better to start with a small amount and work your way up. If you start too complicated, you'll find it very difficult to get the shape that you desire. So let's start it nice and low. And the caps is on at 1, which are these caps at the top. If we zero that out, see we get one big face instead of like the pie segments sort of thing. And it's done it for the top and the bottom. So that's a good starting point for this cylinder. I usually start my cylinders like this pretty much all the time, and you can do a lot of different shapes from them. Okay, so let's start. So we've got our base at the bottom. What I'm going to do is just do an extrude, bring that out a little bit, and I'm going to select the top face. I'm going to bring this right out. So that's going to be our top. Then we're just going to work on using the split ring tool and start it's almost sculpting it, but not quite. Let's get, you want a thin kind of neck. So I'm using Y to bring the last tool back, drawing a split ring and then letting go and then pressing R to go into scale mode. And it's just basically doing the same thing over and over again until you're adding in enough resolution to create the shape. Try and keep your lines uniformly spaced. Don't have lots kind of close together unless you're preserving like a crease. And we've got like a lip at the top and the bottom. Let's just do this lip at the top. So I'll do one here, scale it out, and then I'll do another one. And this is where you do want to have one close because we're going to preserve that lip. And I'll do one back here and scale it in. I'll do another one. Oh, wrong. Did it on the wrong axis there, so make sure put it there. I don't want that, so Control Z to undo that. And let's put another one in here. And this one I'm going to actually push up a little bit so it kind of goes inside it to create that lip, the kind of overhang part. Okay, it's looking a bit better. Do one more here. Get that neck, and then double click go into edge mode, double click the edge and it selects the whole ring. It makes life a lot easier. Otherwise you'd have to go into vertex mode and draw a box around the ring. Make sure you don't grab anything else. So it's easier to go into edge mode and just double click one of the edges and select the whole ring. I'll bring that out a bit more. Okay, so it's looking a bit better. Bring it out. Hide the grid, it's getting in the way. And then we want to preserve this bottom part. I'm going to add one there and one there. And I'm just going to extrude this bottom face and scale it in slightly just to create a bit of definition on that edge. Move it down a bit. Okay, so with our rough shape, let's select it and press 3 on the keyboard to see what it looks like in subdivision mode. Okay, so it's not bad. Okay, not too far off. The handles we're going to have to do as separate objects anyway. But at the moment it's okay. I'm going to grab all of these bottom ones and scale them in a bit. Make that base a little bit smaller. Okay, not bad. And then let's do the hole at the top. So let's go into face mode, grab the massive face at the top and extrude. Extrude it in. Hit G to do the same command. So it's done another extrusion. This time I'm going to go down. Hit G. Scale it in. Hit G. Scale it down. And then hit R and scale it in. Okay, so we've created that. So I don't think it go as deep as that, but that's fine at the moment. Preserve the edges. So I kind of want to keep these edges preserved. So I'm going to slice rings into these areas. And then back into object mode and press 3. Okay, that's looking a bit better for sure. Don't do that too much. Right, let's Control S or Command S, I think, on Apple. Let's save it up. So just call it Vase, just in case we crash. So always Control S every now and again. Okay, so in number 1 mode it looks like that, in number 3 mode it looks like that. So we're going to render in number 3 mode obviously, unless you want to go for kind of PlayStation 1 kind of graphics. And we could also mesh smooth. So if I do the mesh smooth button, which is this one, it will essentially end up looking like number 3, but we're still in number 1 now, it's just I've hit mesh smooth. So we've got a lot more resolution, the curves are a lot smoother, If I press 3 on this now, it'll be really smooth. Okay, so I just want to undo that mesh smooth. Excuse me, just undo that mesh smooth because we want to keep it nice and low for the moment. When you're ready to move on, or when you're ready to finalize or texture or even render it, then you can do your mesh smooth. The thing is, when it does a mesh smooth, and then if you delete the history, you can't undo that mesh smooth. So I've got a lot of history building up now because I did a lot of extrusions, a lot of poly tweaks, all of this stuff. So we could go back and mess with them, but we don't want to do that. We just want to delete the history. So I'll go under edit, delete all by type history. I've also got it as the second command here, which is delete history on all objects. You also have delete history on selected object. Okay, sometimes you want to keep your history on like characters, all the controls. If you delete the history, then you can no longer animate the character. So certain things like this, we don't want the history. Right, next up, let's do the handles. And then I think we're almost ready to start texturing. We've only really used the split ring and the extrude at the moment, so it's quite simple tools that you need to use for this one. Okay, let's quickly create a table for it to sit on, nice and easy. So I'll create a cube. It's created it in the middle, so it's actually hidden at the moment, but I'll just scale that out, scale it down, move it down, and so it's kind of sitting on the table. Right. Okay, so for the handles, slightly tricky, but not too bad. So let's work out where we want them to appear. So I've got flat faces. I'm probably going to go on this one and this one. No, not that one. Be this one and this one. Now you could extrude from the cylinder. Probably not advisable, but you could do it that way. But I'm going to create a separate object for these handles. So I'm going to create another cube. Okay, let's just move it up to where we want it. Okay, we're going to slice right down the middle there. Okay. So first things first with the cube, let's just create the handle that comes up from the base, or about a little over halfway up. So probably about there. Go into vertex mode or face mode and then kind of move it up. Go into this split ring tool and slice one around about here. And I'm going to do a couple more as well down here. So I've done 3 new ones. So let's create a few extra faces on our side. So I'm going to select this face and extrude, and then just bring that in. So now we need to kind of curve it and shape it a little bit better. See, it's kind of a bit nicely curved, and our one is very angular at the moment. So I'm going to add in a couple of more rings and jump into vertex mode, and this is where we can just start moving around the verts to start shaping it a little bit better. Okay, so I'm going to move them in. I press Y to bring up my tool, which is split ring. So I'm going to have one here, flatten that off, kind of move it in. These come out slightly. There's a bit of a curve on them. They're not totally flat. I can use the scale blue to make it thicker or thinner on the sides. Probably about there. And that's not great, not terrible. It'll do for now. If we press 3, you can see it's kind of smoothed that out a bit. Let's press 3 on this. Okay, I want to get a bit more definition on this curve. We're going to face mode, and I want to delete the faces that I'm not seeing. So that one, I'm going to delete, press the delete key. I don't even see it. Jump into wireframe just to select this one. I don't even want that one, so delete it. Straight up delete. Now we can kind of shape it a bit better. So I want more of a curve. Okay, let's let's delete these edges. We're going to do a little bit of edit mesh. So if I press the delete key, you'll notice if I go into vertex, it hasn't deleted these vertices, which is really annoying. So when you delete an edge, you have to use the component delete, which is this one up here, delete the selected polygon components. If I do that, it's actually deleted the vertex as well, which is what we want. Now I'm going to go multi-cut. I'm going to add one going to press K to end it. So you click and drag. I want to have that finishing in the corner. You'll see why in a second, because now I can create a little bit more of a nicer curve. We've got a very large face here, so I might slice just a split ring in that one just to subdivide that face a bit more, and then I can move it out and get a bit more of a curve going. Okay. Make it a little bit thinner. I'm going to do a slice down at the bottom, and it does have a little lip at the end, so I'm going to go in and then go out. We can always check our side view as well, because that's going to be our exact side. Create a nice kind of arch. We've got enough resolution to evenly space out these lines and create a curve from it. Don't want to select that one. Just accidentally select this one, you can just undo it or reselect the one that you want. Alright. Okay, I accidentally deleted a face that I didn't want to delete. You see if I press 3, got a big hole here, so we can use the append polygon tool to bring that face back. Under mesh tools, append polygon, then I click on one of the edges of the hole, click on the other edge and hit enter. So that face has come back. Press 3. Okay, our handle's looking a bit better. Now let's create a bit more depth by slicing the other way, but let's do one right down the middle and then scale them, do a global scale that kind of brings it out. And I'm going to do the same thing on the inside. And bring it up a bit. Yeah, scale it out a bit more. Okay, then we press 3 and then we have our basic handle. You can always tweak it. This is why I like to work it in low resolution, because you can just always tweak it. If I mesh smooth, if I've got so much going on, then it's hard to adjust the basic shape and form of the object. Alright, so I'm reasonably happy with that. A bit too much. Alright, so next up, select. We've built up quite a lot of history, so let's go edit, delete by type history. Okay, let's make sure it's not colliding into the inside, so kind of push it back. We've got a very thin edge here, so I'm going to have to kind of rotate it to match without it going through, but that'll do. Okay, let's duplicate the handle with Control or Command and D. No, undo that. I did it wrong. So Control D, and then let's move it over to the side and then jump into rotate and spin it around 180. And we need to get it exact, so we do minus 180 in the rotate Y. And then we can just kind of eyeball it to where it needs to go. Okay, so we've got the vase, we've got the handles. Let's create them as one object. Although the texturing is going to be slightly different, so I'm going to keep them as separate objects for now. If I wanted to create them as one object, I'd select all three of them and go under combine, which is this one. Now it essentially treats them as one object. I'm just going to undo that for now. I'm going to select all three of them and go Control G, creates a group. We'll call that our Vase GRP, Vase group. And we should have three objects inside the group in our outliner. So we've got the actual vase. I'm just going to make sure I label these up. Handle 1 or handle R. And this will be handle left or handle 2. Alright. Okay, let's save it up. Control S. And let's chuck in a light. Let's do a quick render. So we're going to Arnold. Lights, we're going to use a sky dome again. So best way to get nice even lighting, quick and easy, and looks really cool. So go under the sky dome color tab and select the checker box, select the file, select the folder, and load in the glazed patio or a similar kind of HDR file. Change color space to raw. Now I like hiding it in the viewport because it gets annoying, so you zero it out in the visibility and scroll down to viewport, change facing from front to back. So now we don't see it, but it is still there. If I press 7, we have a lighting mode now. Next up we need to assign shaders, so like we did in the cube one, we're going to use Arnold standard surface. So I'll go right click, assign new material, shader, AI standard surface. So I'm going to do one for the vase, I'll call that vase, and I'm going to do another one for the handles. So I'm going to go create, assign new material again, create another one, and call this one handles. Select the other handle and right click and go assign existing material. So then we can either assign the vase, we can assign the handles. The Lambert is the default one, we don't want that. So we want the handles. Okay. Now let's just do a render and see where we're at. If we bring up our Arnold window, press play. Let's do a quick render. So the HDR file has a built-in sun, or like a very bright light source, and that's casting this main shadow. If I move the HDR, if I rotate the sky dome, you can see I'm actually adjusting the position of that key light source, which is pretty cool. Okay. And then let it go, let it clean up. I mean, that's fine. We haven't added any textures or colors yet, so it still looks a little bit boring, but we will get there. Okay, next up, select our vase. Let's have a look at our vase shader. So the AI standard surface. Let's apply a preset. So we'll go under the presets tab and let's go copper 50%. So it's added a lot of reflectivity. I'm going to do the same thing for our handles. So preset copper 50%. Okay, let's just render it now. So now we have a lot more metallic shader. You see, without that HDR sky dome, it wouldn't reflect like this. So that's actually reflecting from the image, and it looks very cool. Okay, stop that. So next we'll load in a texture for our vase. So we go back into the standard surface. At the moment we've got a pure white color. If I click on the checker box and go File, click on the folder, and then I've got a couple of textures that we'll upload. Where's the one I like? This one's quite good. So load in this one. Now we won't see it in the viewport until we press number 6 We can leave color space as sRGB, it's fine. So if I press number 6, now we can, and then number 7, we can see it textured and lit. That's the default mapping, and we see it's stretching a lot here, it's very big here, and it's stretching a lot at the bottom. So not great. Let's quickly fix the mapping. If we select the vase and go under the UV tab, and let's assign a cylindrical projection. So this will project the texture in a cylindrical fashion. We have planar, we have spherical, we have automatic, but this one, let's try cylindrical. So if I do that, it creates a new cylinder shaped gizmo that we can use. So I'm going to wrap it around 360 degrees, like there. And then using this one, I'm going to kind of scale it up a bit. I'm going to try and match those horizontal lines to the edges of our vase. Maybe something like that, but I don't want to stretch it too much, so I think maybe that. So then we have something that looks like that. Depending on the resolution of your texture, whether it's like a 1K, 2K, 4K, or even 8K texture resolution, you can really zoom in and pull out a nice amount of detail. I mean, it's starting to pixelate, but this is only the viewport. If I hit render, it shows it slightly better, but it's still getting a little bit soft because of the resolution of this texture. It's probably not that high. But that's fine because we're only going to be viewing it pretty far out anyway, maybe about from here. And it looks pretty decent from there. Alright, so let's fix the top and the bottom. So jump into number 1 mode. Let's select our bottom face and go right shift and greater than and less than. Expands or shrinks the selection. So it's going to grab, I'm going to go greater than, grab all of those ones up to there. I'm actually just going to assign as the handles on that one, which hasn't actually got a texture currently. And then let's do the same thing with the top. So select the middle one and go shift greater than. Let's grab all of them up to there. Assign existing handles. Okay. So now we've fixed that. We've got a basic texture for our vase, and we've fixed the top and the bottom stretching areas. Next up, we're going to apply a bump map on our vase to get a bit more depth, a bit more edge on the texture. Let's just render it now, see what we look like. That's quite cool. Yeah, it's quite nice and sharp on the patterns. All right, nice. Again, you can still edit the mesh if you want to, so I want to actually shrink this base a little bit because we're still working in number 1, which is a very low resolution stage. We can still do a bunch of editing. So to load in a bump map, let's go under our Vase shader network and go down under geometry, under bump mapping, click on the checker box, click on file, click on the door icon, and then click on the folder icon. And then I added a texture bump file. It's basically just a black and white version of this texture, and it can use it as the bump. The black would be a 0, and then white would be a value of 1, and it would kind of raise and lower the amount of bump. See, it's the default setting is quite strong, as you can see there. So I'm going to go into the back door, which is this one, and then bump depth, we can lower that right down to 0.05. Probably a little bit too low. 0.1. Yeah, so it's only just kind of extruding the edges, but it should have quite a nice effect of the way the light kind of catches over the texture. So that's a bump map applied. Let's quickly show the floor. I'm going to create a new texture for the floor, so assign new material, Arnold shader, standard surface. I'm going to do a preset. What have we got here? Let's make it quite reflective. We've got glass and all of that, but glass does take a very long time to render. I try and avoid it at all costs if possible, but sometimes you have to use it. Let's just do a plastic shader on the floor. Okay, got something like that. So this is actually this is going to be the table, isn't it? I'm going to create a wood texture for the table. And to do some table legs, I'm just going to duplicate one of the cubes, scale it right up, create. Control D, duplicate, select them both, duplicate. Then I'm going to create a plane for our floor. Go to polyplane 1, make the subdivisions width and height 1. Go under edge, select these two corner edges and extrude them up. So we've kind of got a corner of a room. And let's create a new material, a new shader. And it's getting quite a few shaders in this scene already. I've got like 4 different shaders, so make sure you rename them. This is going to be our room shader. Yeah, let's have a nice. Again, we can have a flat color, or you can go more advanced, plug in like a wallpaper texture, and getting that looking a bit more realistic. So I've got the vase group, and then let's create a table. So shift select all the components, all the objects of the table, Control G. We'll call that table, GRP. And then with the vase group selected, middle mouse drag that into the table group. So now the table group has the vase or the vase inside that group, but I can still press up, and then if I just want to select on its own, if I press up again, and then I'm selecting the whole group, so that makes it quite easy. Okay, let's do a render now. So we've got a corner of a room. It's a little bit dark. We're losing a lot of light because I've blocked off a lot of the sides. So let's create a Arnold lights area light. A big kind of window light source coming in. Intensity something like 200. Select the camera. So go under view here, select camera, and under focal length, let's go for a little bit longer, something like a 75mm lens. Right, okay, not bad. This table, I'm going to plug in a texture. So we need, I'll include some textures, materials. I've got some here, wood. So I've got a wood albedo, which is the color. Then I've got a normal map, which I can use for my bump map, and then I've got a roughness map. I'll show you where to plug in the roughness because those are awesome. So we'll load the albedo into the color. Why is it still this weird purple? Very strange. Okay, let's load the bump file. So our bump map's going to be the normal map. We can see we've got a bit of bump coming through now, but instead of bump you want to change it to tangent space normals if it's a normal map. Normal maps look kind of pink and purpley, whereas bump maps are just like grayscale, black and white. So I don't know why I'm still getting this weird colour. What is going on here? Create a new shader because something's weird. Assign new material, shader. Okay, that's better. Select that as well. Okay, that's better. Let's keep it grey. Let's start that again. So we're going to call this table 2, color, checker box, file, folder, albedo, the wood. Okay, that looks better. Don't have to change it because sRGB is fine. Geometry, bump mapping. So checker box, file, changes, tangent space normals. Leaving the value at 1 is fine for normal maps usually. Let's load in the normal. Okay, it's a bit dark at the moment. We can light up the scene using our exposure and gamma, but this is just viewport. It's not going to actually affect the render. Let's just light that up a bit. Let's see it a bit better now. Alright. Next up, let's plug in that roughness map. You plug it into the specular roughness. So click on the checker, go file, go folder, select the roughness.tiff. This one we do have to set to raw, as it's a grayscale roughness, and we need to go into color balance and select alpha is luminance. And then we have our roughness map. So now I've turned on lights and everything's really bright now, so I need to turn down this. But we should have quite a realistic wood shader now, hopefully. Make sure our metalness is 0 because it's wood, it's not metal. Specularity, we could add a specular map, but for now I'll just dull it down a little bit and I'll hit render. I don't know why it's doing this weird colour thing. Why is it doing it just on that? That's so bizarre. Are you kidding? It's alright, we'll figure it out. Delete all by type history. I'm going to merge them into one, so this table is continuous. Okay, that's fine. Okay, whatever I did there, it seemed to have sorted it. I'm merging the objects into one. Now we've got our table shader. It's a little bit dark, the wood, so I'm going to lighten it up by selecting the color, going under color balance and adjusting the color offset, just making that a little bit brighter. There we go. Okay, so before we continue, I haven't subdivided any of the edges of these cubes, so the edges are very sharp and it doesn't look very realistic. So we'll quickly subdivide those edges. So I'm just going to delete 3 of the legs. So select this leg and go under the split ring. So you want near the top, near the bottom, go into wireframe mode, and we want to preserve those corners, so to have them like there. Now if we press 3, it will catch the light much better. Let's do the same thing with this guy. So going to split rings, I want one there, one there, one there, one there, and one there. There we go. Oh, forgot to do that side. See, this curved, which means I forgot to do the one there. Great, so now I can see my transforms way over to the side, but I want it in the middle, so I can just click CP for center pivot, brings the pivot back into the middle. So I'm going to Control D, duplicate these to back to where we were. Alright, let's add some visible light, and let's bring back our light, area light. So now it's just a case of getting the lighting right, tweaking the textures, figuring out your composition, and so on. So this light here, 200. Okay. So press 6 and press 7. Okay, we have... That table should already start looking a bit better with the smooth edges now. Right. Okay, it's quite nice. See if we can make it look any better with visible light. So go under the Arnold render settings, change image size, HD 1080, go under the Arnold renderer, go under environment, atmosphere tab, create AI atmosphere volume, put a density to a value of something like 0.02 and press play. Increase that value, 5. So the more I increase it, you see the kind of foggier it gets. Maybe it's a bit too much. We still want some kind of shadows in our scene. Increase, so let's try a value of something like 500. And I'm going to change the temperature of the light by going use color temperature. I'm going to make it quite a cold light, about 9,000 Kelvin. Line up your shot. Okay, and then when you're happy to do a render, bring up the render view window, move this to the side, and then we can IPR it. Although it's not going to work, so I'm just going to cancel that because we're still in viewport mode. It'll only work if I render it here, so you have to go under back to normal viewport 2.0. Now I can IPR it. So that's a basic vase scene. I'll show you how to, next we'll comp it onto a real background. Or Josh will show you how to do that in After Effects, but I'll quickly show you how to create a shadow catcher material. As it cleans it up, we can see that's quite nice. Okay, stop there. Check my settings. I'm going to quickly switch to GPU because I could get it a little bit faster, but CPU is default. Okay, there we go. So the cleanup should be much quicker now. Okay, nice. Okay, great. So that's a basic scene with a cylinder creating a vase. I'll quickly show you now, before we end the lesson, how to just comp it. So you would create a plane, just like you would do a floor. If this was on a flat surface, this would be fine. So let's create that in the middle, and right click, assign new material, Arnold shader. Instead of standard surface, we're going to do a shadow matte, which is another word for a shadow catcher. So it will go black, but the cool thing with the shadow catcher is if I render it now, let's go back to viewport, render it, it will firstly take a while, hopefully it won't crash. Yeah, GPU is really buggy. It crashes a lot, but I think it's okay. Yeah, it just took a moment. Phew. Control save before you render when you can. Okay, so it looks like we've got a floor and we've got a shadow coming off it, but if I show the alpha channel, which I can't in the viewport renderer, it's annoying, so let's just go into our normal renderer, do another render. If I show our alpha channel, we can see that it's not working properly. Great. Okay, let's stop that. Let's figure out why. Okay, I figured it out. It was just that I was in GPU mode and it's not supported yet in GPU mode. That's great. So make sure we're in render device CPU. Okay, so with the shadow catcher there in place, let's bring out, let's make it a bit bigger. Bring out our rendering window and hit render. Okay, so it will look a little bit weird to begin with. So as we render with the shadow map, if we go into our alpha channel, we can see that the white areas are opaque and the dark areas are transparent. And it's left our vase opaque and we've got the shadow from our scene. It's actually creating a few different ones. We've got the one from our HDR dome, we've got the one from our area light coming off to the side here, and the cleanup will probably take a few moments on that. It's quite noisy, very soft shadows. But once that's done, you can use this alpha channel in After Effects to keep the shadow of your object but comp it onto a live action background. Okay, so we have our vase textures and shaders all set up. Let's create a scene to put the vase into. Okay, so I'll just delete everything apart from the vase, and we'll just start from scratch on setting up the new scene. So I shot a bit of background footage of a little bit outside, and I've got the file that you can use, and I've also got a still image we can use. It's not a HDR, so it's not going to give us amazing light values, but it will do for now. So we're in our perspective at the moment. We don't really want to do it in the perspective. We want to create a new camera for setting up a scene. So we'll go create cameras. We don't really need an aim, so we'll just go with a camera. So that will create a new camera. To jump into that camera, go under panels, perspective, and camera 1. We'll call this shot camera. Spell that right. Okay, call it shot camera. Now when I select the camera we're over in shot camera, and it says camera 1 down there. If I want to go back into my perspective, I can just go panels, perspective, and there's my perspective. So alright, we're in the camera, so looking through the camera, load in our background image. And we want to use the background image for our light dome. Okay, so let's create a new light dome, and the color we'll map in a file, and I've just got it Vase project still plate. So we'll map. This will give us some rough color values that match the live action shot. So display the live action shot looks a bit like this. Starting right there. Got a bit of handheld movement. So it'd be quite good. Josh will show you how to track that camera move in After Effects, so it looks like the vase is going to be really there. But what we need to do is extract a a static frame from the video plate, so I'll just quickly jump into After Effects and do that now. We've got our photo, which is this still plate. We're using that as our lighting. But if I jump into After Effects, chuck in the video plate, come on. Get rid of the wobbly bit at the beginning. So we pretty much only want this part. Okay, so I'm just going to grab any frame and export, save the frame as a file. Let's make it a JPEG. And this is going to be our video plate, our background plate. Okay, so that's rendered out. Let's load in that background plate into Maya now. So with our camera 1 selected, go under View, Image Plane, Import Image. Select our new video plate, and now it will create it as a plane in our scene, which is going to help us frame up the shot, make sure everything kind of matches and looks good. So as you can see, as I move around now, the image plane just stays still. Okay, so I'm going to start roughly placing where I want this vase to be in the shot. Now, I used quite a long lens. I used a 70-200, so I was about 70mm. But I think we're already at, we're at 35, so we don't want to be. We want to be around about 70. That will match our focal length of the camera. Now we need to figure out where our horizon is. So let me, if I show the grid, it might be easier to get our horizon plane. It's going to be quite far out. Let's have it like about here. We've got some interesting lighting going on. It's a very bright day out there. We've got some light kind of coming in from the right, but then all of this is in shadow. So I might have little bits of light catching the edges, but most of this is going to be in shadow. Okay, yeah, we'll just go for something like that. And then when you're happy with the composition, you can select the camera and press the S key. And on frame 1 we'll have a little red line, so that's the keyframe that we've set. So if I mess my camera up, I move it around, I just jump back and it will bring back to where we were. Alright, let's start by doing a render to see how it looks. Probably does not look good. So I'm just going to render it. Alright, convert the textures, fine. Okay. Stop it straight away. This is no good. Select the sky dome, zero out the camera visibility. Okay, re-render. Okay. I can get rid of my grid now. Okay. Not bad. We already have this area light, so coming in from the right. Now that is kind of accurate already, which is kind of luck, but I'm going to have it more like a sunlight, so I'm going to have it higher up and pointing down. You only really want to catch the edges. Okay, snap that back. Let's have a look. Okay. Fairly decent. We've got the volume fog on, which we probably don't want, so I'll disable that because there isn't really any in this scene. Okay, and then we have a render that looks something like this. Now it's very hot on those edges, so we want to increase our area light intensity even more. Okay, getting a bit more highlights coming from that right side. Let's cancel that. Let's redo our shadow catcher. So I deleted it, so I'm just going to create another one. So actually this one, I'm going to do a cube. If I can try and match the tiles, which would actually create more accurate shadow effects. Make sure it's sitting on it so it's not floating. It's probably about like there. And then I'll create another one, Control D it. This is when we need to match our angle. That angle actually matches quite well. If I press 4, you jump into wireframe, and then you can kind of see through it. Okay, so select both of those objects, right click, assign new material, shader, shadow map. Okay, let's try rendering now. Okay. Getting a little bit of a shadow here, which is a bit odd. Anyway, that's because we are floating. So let's jump back and make sure we're not floating. Bring those right down to about there. I'm going to group those two. I can just move them together. Oh, and I forgot the handles. Great. Group everything. That should look a bit better. I'm just kind of setting up the 3D space a bit more. Okay, cut that. Now we're not in the original position where we wanted it, so I'm going to have to move it that way and that way. As long as I don't affect the Y, the up and down, then it will still be the correct height. Okay, I think that's more like where I wanted it. Nice. Okay, it's jumped back there, so to reset that, go into viewport, go into Arnold, and re-render it. So it has to kind of re-render the scene. Okay, that's looking a bit better now. I think it's floating slightly. Always a problem that I have with these objects. Yeah, this needs to come up. Okay, so that looks not quite there. And then bring this down. Okay, pretty happy with that. Now our environment lighting, let's just check where our light source, it should be coming from the right side. If I press number 7, and then we can rotate our lights. It's not affecting the lighting much, as we can see. That should probably be okay. Now, wondering if we could drop more of it into shadow. If we try increasing the area light intensity. Yeah, that's pretty good. So once you're kind of happy with the render in Maya, then you would render out a still frame, and we can then comp it in After Effects. Luckily this camera angle, there's no like Z movement, there's no forward and back, so we only have to worry about the X and Y tracking. Should be nice and easy in After Effects. So yeah, pretty happy with that. So in order to save that out, I will cancel that, save the scene, delete our image plane. So we no longer have our image plane. Go into normal viewport and then go into the render view and either IPR or normal render. So this will do the render in the wrong camera, which is great, because it's actually doing it in our perspective, which we don't want. So we want it in our... okay, don't do it in our perspective. If you hit IPR in camera 1, it's, I think because I went into the window, if I hit IPR in camera 1, it should do it in camera 1. Yeah, okay, nice. So here's our render. Let's double check our shadow matte is working. So it's cleaning up the render. Check our alpha channel. Okay, so that looks quite nice. We have the wall with the shadow. But I might actually extend the shadow matte on the wall, and because we're not getting any shadows on the wall. So I'll select edge, grab this edge, and extrude that up. What? No, we don't want it off like that. So make sure that is like that. We're ready to do the final render. IPR. Check our shadow capture's working. When the render's finished and the cleanup's complete, go File, Save Image, PNG, training videos. I'll just put it in the vase. We'll call this vase render. Make sure it's PNG or a file with transparency. Save that up. Then we have a look. We'll have a file with transparency with the shadow. I saved it before it cleaned up the shadows. It's still very noisy, but that's how you render it out. So if everyone can get their vase renders prepped, rendered out, and then Josh will run through the After Effects tutorial on how to create a composition and a final render.